It's now been over a week since the Game Awards happened, and unless you've been living under a rock, you'd know that Star Wars Outlaws did not make an appearance at the awards show, besides the fact that it was nominated for Most Anticipated Game in 2024, and despite that it was not there. Now I did make a video talking about why it wasn't there before, which I will summarise in just a second, but in today's video I wanted to talk about when we will actually hear about Star Wars Outlaws, because the game is releasing next year and we've already had tons of marketing stuff for it earlier this year, so I just wanted to make a little bit of sense of that. Now before I do get into that, make sure you are subscribed to the channel for more Star Wars Outlaws news. It's going to be a big focus on the channel next year, so make sure you don't miss out on that. Now to summarise the theory I had about why it wasn't at the Game Awards, now a quick reminder that this is just a theory of mine, it's not concrete or anything, but the reason I think it wasn't at the awards show was because of the release of Avatar Frontiers of Pandora, which is a game that literally released on the day of the Game Awards, made by Massive Entertainment, so the exact same studio working on Outlaws. So the fact that they released a huge AAA game on a huge franchise on the same day as the awards show leads me to believe that that's why they wouldn't then release a trailer and a release date for their next big open world game set in a completely other franchise, albeit owned by the same company of Disney. And I do think that does make a lot of sense. Certainly if I was Ubisoft and Massive Entertainment, I'd want the focus on that day to be on Avatar, since that's the new release. And we've been waiting on Avatar for at least 5 or 6 years now since its initial reveal, so Outlaws definitely could wait a little bit longer to get some big news. And as much as that sucks from a Star Wars fan's perspective, it absolutely does make sense from a business perspective. So that's my theory as to why we didn't see Star Wars Outlaws at the Game Awards. But now the big question on everyone's mind is, when are we actually going to hear about Outlaws next? Now for me, the time that makes the most sense is the start of next year, either in January or February. Now the reason I say that is because I believe Star Wars Outlaws will probably release in Q2, so anytime between April 1st and June 30th. Now I think that's the case because they already went ham with releasing news and information about the game last June and July, and then back in September, Julian Geraghty, so the creative director, was said to be moving back to the Division franchise for the Division 3. Now announcements like that don't happen unless the current game they're working on is actually going to be releasing somewhat soon, at least within the next 10 to 12 months or so. So I think it absolutely makes sense to see that. Now with Jedi Survivor, we didn't get proper gameplay until around February time, which ended up being 2 months before the release of the game. So the fact that we got gameplay already for Star Wars Outlaws the day after it was officially revealed, I think is already a telling sign that the game is probably somewhat close to launching, and it has now been a good 6 to 7 months since we got all of that. So starting off the new year with a bang, whether that's in January or even February, I think at that point we need to get a new trailer that actually gives us a release date, so that at that point Ubisoft can then start marketing the game, which will give them plenty of time to make a big splash and release it, probably in April or May in my opinion. And we have seen a lot of pretty big games over the last few years release in this time period and even earlier, rather than the October, November, December time that we are so used to. Last year we had Jedi Survivor at the end of April, and then Zelda Tears of the Kingdom released in May. The year before that we even had Elden Ring, which I think released in February or March time. So a lot of huge games are now releasing within the first 6 months rather than the last 6 months. And it's also worth noting as well that Avatar Frontiers of Pandora will be having a huge story DLC release in the summer of next year, and then also later in the year in autumn. So I think Ubisoft will probably want to release Outlaws at some time in mid-spring, which would then be April or May, so that they can gear up for the launch of the Avatar DLC a couple months later in July or August, and then probably in November they can release the second DLC for Avatar. And then if Outlaws gets any DLC, then perhaps we could then see that in early 2025, but I definitely am not expecting that to be the case. Regardless of that though, I think most of the points I've made here back up my reasoning as to why I think we could get a new trailer and release date for Star Wars Outlaws in January or February. January would also be the 3-year anniversary of the game's official announcement, so the timing is pretty much perfect from all aspects. Next year could be a huge year for us as Star Wars gamers with Outlaws, and then hopefully Star Wars Hunters as well finally. So if you're excited for all of that, make sure you are subscribed to the channel, and let me know when you think Star Wars Outlaws will get a new trailer. That is it from me today though. Thank you all very much for watching, and may the Force be with you always.